Hi, in this video I will introduce you to the data mapping functionalities within the .legal compliance platform. Data mapping is an essential part of your compliance documentation, and that's also why it's an important part of our compliance platform. On your dashboard, you will be able to see different key numbers at the top of your dashboard. Here you will find processing activities, assets, and vendors. And these three are important parts of your data mapping. You can look at the data mapping as a triangle where you have the processes, you have the assets, and you have the vendors. All three parts are important, and all three parts is working together. So if you make a change on a process level, for instance, this change could also apply to an asset and to a vendor. And of course, the compliance platform is automated, so it will help you make the documentation in the right parts of the system so that you don't need to make the same documentation task twice. If you navigate to processing activities, which is the first part of the data mapping, you will find a list of all your work processes, also named processing activities. This list represents different parts of your organization and how you handle, for instance, personal data. If you edit a processing activity, you can navigate through a flow where you can add the different information that is needed in terms of this particular process. You can simply navigate through the next and the previous buttons in the top of the flow, and you can also press directly into different steps in the flow. As mentioned, the data mapping consists of different informations, for instance, which personal data is handled in a processing activity, but the data mapping also consists of this link between the processes, the assets, and the vendors. So, for instance, in this step, assets on a processing activity level, you can link the assets that are used within this process by adding a new asset and select from a list of already created assets. These assets you can select in the list is the same as the ones you have defined on the Asset tab in the menu. So if I just navigate to that one, you will find your different assets. And here you will work in the same way as we have just done on a processing activity level. You can edit an asset, and then you will be presented for another flow with other informations. But some informations, such as personal data, for instance, will be the same that you have mapped on the processing activities so that you don't need to do that twice. And the third part is the supplier. If we look at this asset MailChimp, we have Rocket Science Group as our supplier, and we can then mark that this supplier is also a data processor, and that we want the asset to create automatic sharings on our processing activities when this supplier is used. So this means when I have the MailChimp asset mapped here, and if I just go to the overview, I can see that I already have mapped that I used MailChimp within these processes. So if I navigate to the processing activity, I'm saying edit processing activity, and then navigate to the asset where I have mapped MailChimp, I can see that now I have the data processor, Rocket Science Group, and if I then navigate to step 7 under the data processor step, I will also see that there's now been created a sharing to the Rocket Science Group based on that asset. Of course, you can also directly map a data processor or another data controller on a process, so it don't need to be a supplier on an IT system. You can simply add and then select from the vendors and other companies, legal entities you have created there. You can select which one you are sharing data with, And when you do so, you have the possibility to link to an agreement and more. In this way, you will make a data mapping with all three parts of the triangle, and you can use and see the same documentation from different angles, both from a vendor, an processing activity, and an asset.